The stars above Earth had always been silent witnesses to humanity's rise and fall, but now, after centuries of absence, they trembled with expectation. Deep in the void of space, the alien coalition known as the Jarathi followed a faint, desperate signal that pulsed across the void like a heartbeat. To them, it was the cry of a lost species, the promise of easy conquest, or so they believed. Earth, once vibrant with human life, had long been written off as dead. Entire fleets had scoured its orbit, finding only decay, dust, and silence. The galaxy whispered of the humans' extinction, and the aliens were eager to claim what they assumed was a hollow victory. When the coalition ships pierced the atmosphere, the view of Earth was almost theatrical. Cities sprawled like the skeletons of giants, skyscrapers cracked and bent under the weight of centuries, and forests had begun reclaiming the land, creeping over highways and buildings with green, unyielding fingers. The oceans shimmered quietly, untroubled by the absence of civilization. The Jarathi pilots marveled at the eerie beauty of a world abandoned, a planet where life had faded like the last notes of a song. But there was a faint anomaly. Life signs, barely perceptible, flickered across the sensors of the alien ships. A single, faint heartbeat among the ruins. A human. One, the legend of the last human, was no longer myth, it was real. The coalition commanders exchanged cautious glances. They had expected frailty, desperation, the weakness of a species near its end. Instead, they were greeted with a calm, steady signal of life, as if the human had been waiting for them all along. The Jarathi descended cautiously, their ships gliding over the jagged remains of broken cities. Shadows of fallen towers stretched like fingers over cracked streets, and in the quiet, every step of their landing crafts echoed like a challenge. The aliens anticipated fear, perhaps a desperate scramble to survive. Instead, they saw nothing moving on the ground. Their sensors flared once, twice, scanning every corner, every ruined building, but the human had vanished from sight. High above the city, atop a crumbling skyscraper that had somehow resisted the slow crush of time, a figure waited. Lean, wiry, but with a presence that seemed to command the very air, the human watched the aliens descend. There was no panic in their posture, no urgency to flee. The coalition might have assumed this was weakness or hubris, but it was neither. The human was calculating, observing, preparing. The first alien scouts landed near what had once been a central plaza. Broken fountains, cracked tiles, and the skeletal remains of statues lay scattered like forgotten memories. They moved cautiously, their multi-jointed limbs clicking against the stone. Every step triggered sensors that hummed warnings of potential hazards, though none of these threats were immediately visible. The Jarathi were confident. They were the galaxy's most advanced soldiers, the inheritors of countless wars and victories. But Earth, even in its ruined state, held secrets the aliens could not yet perceive. Suddenly, a shadow shifted across the city. The scouts froze. A flock of birds erupted from a nearby park, though their wings were larger, sharper, tipped with something metallic that reflected the sun like glinting knives. The aliens hesitated, scanning with precision instruments, but the birds vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving only an uneasy silence behind. From above, the last human smiled faintly. This was no accident. The birds were only a small part of the defense, a warning of the larger network that had been crafted over centuries. Every ruin, every broken street, every overgrown alley was a piece of a trap, waiting for those who underestimated the planet's new guardians. The aliens pressed forward, their confidence returning as they assumed the human was merely hiding. They called out through universal translators, their voices a mixture of curiosity and command. "Human, you are no longer alone. Surrender and you will be spared." "I never have." Roots from the overgrown flora writhed like serpents, lifting slightly from the cracked streets as though testing the intruders. The birds returned, sharper and more numerous, circling like hunters above. Every motion seemed coordinated, precise, a choreography of predatory intent. The human crouched atop the building, eyes scanning, mind calculating. They had not been born in the old world that the aliens knew, but in the chaos that followed humanity's collapse. Every moment had been a lesson in survival, every failure a blueprint for adaptation. Earth had changed, evolved, and in their absence, humans had left a mark deeper than any alien army could imagine. As the aliens advanced cautiously, the human activated a series of devices hidden among the ruins. Small machines, almost imperceptible, hummed to life, sending out electromagnetic pulses. The aliens' sensors flickered and warped, giving false readings of life and motion. Streets that appeared clear suddenly teemed with invisible hazards. For every step the coalition took, the city itself seemed to push back, testing, probing, and revealing only what it wished. One scout ventured too close to a cracked fountain, its sensors lighting up in alarm. The water in the fountain was not ordinary water. It had been infused with centuries of bioengineering, creating a reactive chemical that expanded violently when disturbed. The fountain erupted with a hiss and a roar, sending the alien tumbling back, covered in a harmless but visually terrifying foam that burned sensors temporarily. From the rooftop, the last human watched the chaos unfold with a detached satisfaction. The aliens had underestimated them, as all species did. They had assumed survival equaled weakness, that the remnants of humanity could be cajoled or captured easily. They had not accounted for ingenuity, for patience, for the ability to turn even ruins into weapons. The alien commander, a tall being with segmented armor and multifaceted eyes, barked orders. "Advance! They cannot hide forever. We will locate the human and end this." Wolves with claws reinforced by metallic fibers, birds with razor-edged beaks, and insects larger than any scout could handle, all moving in silent coordination. Every predator had been shaped to test, confuse, and ultimately eliminate intruders. The aliens paused as the first wave of attacks began, not direct confrontation, but subtle harassment. The predators were fast, intelligent, and terrifyingly coordinated. They attacked only briefly, retreating before the aliens could fully engage. Confusion spread among the ranks. The coalition, masters of countless wars, realized that brute force was not enough. The planet itself had become a weapon. Above, the last human observed with a mixture of amusement and calculation. Every move by the aliens was anticipated, every advance countered. They had spent decades, perhaps centuries, preparing for this moment, studying alien patterns from scraps of technology left behind, predicting how they would respond, and crafting the perfect ecosystem to protect Earth's last child. The city streets, once silent, now seemed alive. Broken tiles shifted, plants moved subtly, and every shadow carried the hint of threat. The Jarathi were soldiers, but here, on a planet thought dead, they were prey. The human allowed themselves a quiet laugh, the sound almost lost in the wind that swept through the ruins. And then, with a calm that belied the storm they had unleashed, the last human spoke again. This time the voice was soft, almost intimate, carried across the ruins in a way that sent a chill through the alien scouts. "You came seeking salvation," they said. "You will find only monsters." And humanity, at least its last survivor, was still very much alive, commanding the forces that had been silently growing for centuries. The sky darkened slightly as clouds shifted above the city, almost in response to the last human's presence. The aliens, for all their technology and experience, felt a creeping unease. Every instinct told them to retreat, to reconsider their plan, but pride and duty held them in place. They were trained for victory, yet here on a ruined planet, victory seemed an uncertain thing. The last human watched quietly, letting the tension build. Their eyes swept the horizon, noting every movement, every reaction, every flicker of fear in the alien ranks. They did not rush. There was no panic, no haste. The humans of old had fought and survived wars far greater than this. And they, the last of the line, had the patience to wait, to let the invaders come to them, to make mistakes, and to learn. The alien commander took a cautious step forward, signaling the scouts to form a perimeter. "We will not be cowed by a single human," they said, though the uncertainty in their voice betrayed them. "Prepare to engage." And from the shadows of broken skyscrapers and overgrown streets, the monsters of Earth stirred, ready to awaken at their command. The last human raised a hand, and the city, the jungle, and the creatures of the planet responded in kind. The first battle for Earth's secrets, and for its last human, was about to begin. The alien scouts had thought they understood Earth. They had thought it was a forgotten world, empty and quiet, its human inhabitants long gone. But now, as shadows shifted around them and the sounds of movement stirred in the overgrown streets, the truth became impossible to ignore. Earth was not dead. Earth was awake, and it was angry. From the ruins, shapes moved with a terrifying grace. Wolves with claws reinforced by unknown alloys slinked between fallen buildings, their eyes glinting with intelligence. Birds with razor-sharp wings dove from above, not to attack directly, but to confuse, to distract, to guide the aliens into the traps that had been prepared over centuries. Even insects, enormous and alien in appearance, moved with a purpose that was almost military in nature, forming patterns that herded the intruders along paths of danger. The alien commander barked orders. "Form a perimeter, advance cautiously, do not engage until we know what we are facing." The scouts obeyed, their multi-jointed legs clicking against cracked tiles. But even with caution, they were no match for a world that had learned to defend itself. The first strike came not from a beast, but from the earth itself. Pavement shifted beneath one of the scouts, tiles rising in jagged spikes that tore at metal limbs. Another scout was caught in a tangle of roots that had grown with alarming speed, pulling it to the ground and twisting its sensors. Panic flared across the alien faces, and they realized that brute force alone would not win this battle. From above, the last human watched. They had been preparing for this moment for centuries, scavenging old alien technology, studying patterns of behavior, and cultivating the creatures that now moved as their soldiers. They had become both guardian and general, orchestrating the planet itself in a dance of destruction. The humans of old had fought wars with strategy and cunning. The last human had learned from their ancestors and amplified it, turning Earth into a living weapon. The aliens regrouped, forming tight clusters and scanning every corner. They tried to detect the source of the attacks, to find the human behind the chaos. But the planet itself seemed to defy their instruments. Sensors flared and died, readings contradicted one another, and every path they tried led them deeper into danger. Every moment, the last human watched, analyzing, predicting, and adjusting their traps. A sudden roar echoed through the city. From the ruins of an old stadium, a massive creature emerged. It resembled a bear, but its claws were metal-tipped, and its eyes burned with an unnatural intelligence. The scouts opened fire, lasers cutting through the air, but the beast moved with uncanny speed, dodging and weaving, its attacks precise. It did not kill indiscriminately. It targeted strategically, forcing the aliens into vulnerable positions, guiding them toward hazards that had been prepared long ago. The Jarathi hesitated. Their experience in war had taught them many lessons, but nothing had prepared them for a planet that fought with a mind of its own. They were trained to anticipate enemies, to predict tactics, but here, every moment was uncertain, every move fraught with peril. The monsters of Earth were not mindless. They were extensions of the human's intelligence, extensions of a strategy centuries in the making. One scout attempted to flank the creature, moving down a narrow street between collapsed buildings. As it advanced, the walls themselves seemed to respond, vines lashing out like whips, roots wrapping around legs, pulling it off balance. The scout fell, its systems momentarily scrambled, and the bear-like beast seized the opportunity to strike, tearing through armor with precision. Other scouts hesitated, unsure whether to advance or retreat. From the rooftop above, the last human's eyes narrowed. They observed every movement, every hesitation, every miscalculation. Their mind was a battlefield, a command center from which the planet itself responded to threats. They whispered instructions into hidden amplifiers, and the city answered. Birds swooped in formations, guiding some aliens toward danger. Trees shifted slightly, opening pathways that seemed safe, only to collapse behind intruders. Every creature, every plant, every hidden device moved in coordination, turning Earth into a weapon of strategy and patience. The alien commander, seeing the chaos unfold, attempted diplomacy. "Human," they called, their voice carrying authority, "we mean no harm. Stand down, and we will leave your world in peace." Wolves leapt from the shadows, their claws slicing through metal. Birds of prey with sharpened wings collided with sensors and armor, disorienting the alien scouts. Even the insects, moving in swarms, acted as strategic units, forcing the aliens into choke points where the terrain and the humans' devices amplified every mistake. The aliens fought back, using their advanced weaponry and training. Lasers cut through the air and grenades tore through rubble, but every attack was anticipated. The last human had studied the patterns of violence, the timing of attacks, and the weaknesses of alien physiology. Each assault was met with a counter, each advance led into a trap, and the planet itself seemed to pulse with life, a guardian watching over its last human child. As the battle escalated, one scout managed to catch a glimpse of the human from the ground. The figure was composed, standing atop a crumbling building, unarmed yet commanding the entire battlefield. Their presence alone inspired the creatures, guiding them with subtle gestures and signals, a silent conductor of a symphony of destruction. The alien commander, frustrated and increasingly desperate, ordered a retreat to reassess. But even retreat was perilous. The streets shifted, the creatures pressed, and the very ground worked against them. Every escape route was monitored, every angle predicted, and every hesitation punished. Hours passed in a tense stalemate. The aliens, experienced in countless battles across the galaxy, began to realize the magnitude of their mistake. They had come expecting a weakened, desperate human, perhaps even one pleading for salvation. Instead, they faced a strategist, a survivor, a being who had turned the very planet into a weapon. From the vantage of the rooftop, the last human watched the alien commander struggle. They allowed a faint smile, one that carried centuries of experience and the knowledge that the galaxy had underestimated humanity once again. They did not need to fight directly. The monsters of Earth, the traps, and the very environment did all the work. The humans of old had conquered through intellect and adaptation, and they had inherited that legacy. Night fell over the ruined city, casting long shadows that twisted and danced across broken buildings. The aliens, weary and disoriented, retreated to temporary safe zones, but the last human knew this was only the beginning. Every movement, every hesitation, every decision by the intruders was part of the humans' plan. They had time, patience, and the advantage of a world that was no longer merely Earth, but a living fortress. In the silence of the night, the humans spoke softly to themselves. They came expecting weakness. They will leave knowing power. They will never understand what it means to survive. And the last human, alone yet commanding the will of an entire planet, prepared for the next phase. The alien scouts would not leave unscathed, and the commander would not return home victorious. Humanity, or what remained of it, had endured, adapted, and weaponized every lesson learned across millennia. Earth had awakened, and its monsters, shaped by human ingenuity, were only the beginning. As the night deepened, the stars above seemed to flicker in anticipation. Across the galaxy, whispers of the last human would spread, carried by sensors, signals, and rumors. A single survivor, yes, but one whose intelligence, cunning, and patience had turned a ruined world into a fortress. The galaxy would remember Earth not as a dead planet, but as a warning. The first wave of alien reinforcements would arrive soon, unprepared for what awaited them. And the last human atop the ruined skyscraper would be ready, their mind already anticipating the next moves, their creatures already poised to respond. They were no longer merely human. They were the embodiment of survival, strategy, and the living spirit of a species that refused to be forgotten. Earth had awakened, the monsters had been unleashed, and the aliens would learn in ways they could not yet imagine why no one should underestimate humanity. The night was quiet, yet it carried the promise of storms. In the ruins, life stirred, and in the shadows, the last human smiled, knowing that the galaxy's understanding of humans would change forever. The dawn broke slowly over the ruins of the city, casting long, fractured beams of sunlight through the skeletal remains of skyscrapers. Dust swirled lazily in the wind, carrying with it the faint scent of decay, metal, and something alive, something that whispered of danger. From the heights of a collapsed observation tower, the last human observed the city below. They had slept little, though sleep had become an unnecessary luxury over the centuries. Their mind was always active, always calculating, always anticipating. The aliens had survived the first night, but the human had learned more about their strengths, their weaknesses, and their patterns than they could imagine. The aliens, for their part, had withdrawn to scattered pockets among the ruins. Their communication lines hummed with tension as squads regrouped, trying to assess the magnitude of the threat. Every sensor they had deployed failed to give accurate readings. Every technological advantage they possessed seemed to be neutralized by the city itself. And most troubling of all, they could not locate the human directly. The last human had learned the art of invisibility, not by hiding, but by controlling perception. They moved like a shadow, never where the aliens expected, always where they would be most effective. From the rooftop, the human raised a hand, and the city responded. A small group of birds, once mundane creatures, now twisted and sharpened by decades of human ingenuity, swooped low over the aliens' positions. Their wings sliced through metal, cutting power lines and scattering small drones that had been deployed to track movement. Wolves emerged from alleyways, not in wild panic but in disciplined coordination, flanking the alien squads and forcing them toward streets the human had mapped for maximum advantage. The city was alive, and the human was its heartbeat. One alien squad tried to advance through what appeared to be a narrow street. As they moved, Tiles shifted beneath them, revealing hidden spikes and ensnaring roots. They fired weapons indiscriminately, but each attack seemed to trigger additional hazards. A crate toppled, releasing a cloud of chemical irritant. A fallen tree branch, embedded with sharp metal shards, struck the aliens as they passed. Every attempt at offense was anticipated, every maneuver countered. The aliens were not merely fighting a human, they were fighting a living, breathing strategy. The commander, seeing his squads faltering, activated a high-frequency communication array. "All units," he bellowed, "hold positions. The human cannot be allowed to control the battlefield. Focus fire on any sign of life." This was not a battle of strength, but of foresight, and the human had lived a lifetime, or several, perfecting every calculation. The first direct confrontation occurred near what had once been a government building. The aliens, frustrated and desperate, had located one of the creatures under the human's command, a massive, bear-like predator with reinforced claws and keen intelligence. They opened fire, and the beast responded with tactical precision. It dodged, pressed forward, and herded the aliens into a narrow alley. Their vines and roots, almost sentient in their response, rose to entangle the intruders. The aliens realized too late that the ground itself had been weaponized. The human, watching from the rooftop, studied the scene with clinical precision. They had anticipated this exact maneuver, had predicted the aliens' panic, and had adjusted the environment to maximize advantage. Every predator, every plant, every small machine scattered throughout the ruins acted in coordination. They were extensions of the human's mind, extensions of a species that refused to be weak. Meanwhile, the aliens tried technological solutions. Drones flew overhead, scanning the city for heat signatures. Lasers and explosives were deployed in attempts to flush out the human. But the environment, modified over centuries, reacted instantly. The drones were lured into traps. Lasers were reflected, redirected, or absorbed by clever arrangements of glass, metal, and organic materials. The aliens' technology, advanced though it was, could not overcome the adaptive intelligence of a single human who had turned an entire planet into an extension of their will. Hours passed, yet the human did not intervene directly. There was no recklessness in their actions, no impulsive displays of power. Instead, they allowed the aliens to exhaust themselves, to make mistakes, to fall into the traps laid out so long ago. Observation, patience, and anticipation were the weapons of choice. This was not chaos. It was control, absolute and unyielding. As midday approached, the humans shifted their focus. They activated a series of concealed devices embedded in the ruins, ancient machines repurposed, biotech interfaces long dormant, and small but deadly automata that had been waiting for centuries. From hidden compartments, mechanical constructs emerged, not monstrous but precise, striking at supply lines, communications, and vehicles. The aliens were forced to scatter, their formation disrupted, their confidence waning. The humans spoke, though only to themselves, a quiet murmur lost among the sounds of controlled destruction. They do not understand. They think survival is weakness. They think numbers are strength. They will learn, but only after they pay the price. This was a strategist, a general, a being who had harnessed the environment, the creatures, and centuries of knowledge into a weapon of unprecedented subtlety and power. The human descended from the rooftop, not in haste, not in panic, but with the calm, deliberate movement of someone who knew every step would be decisive. They moved along paths the aliens could not anticipate, avoiding direct conflict yet remaining in control. Their presence became a shadow over the battlefield, influencing outcomes without appearing to fight directly. Every motion of their body, every glance, seemed to communicate with the creatures, guiding them, coordinating them, refining the attacks. The aliens attempted an organized counterattack. Squads moved in synchronized patterns, attempting to isolate the human and force them into open confrontation. But each attempt was met with new hazards: vines snapping like whips, hidden pits opening underfoot, swarms of insects with coordinated attacks that caused confusion and disorientation. The humans' planning was not reactive, it was anticipatory, predictive. Every move by the aliens was expected, and the response was always prepared. Hours turned to the first afternoon. The alien commander, exhausted and frustrated, convened a quick council with their officers. "We cannot fight this environment. We cannot locate the human. We are losing control," they admitted, voice tinged with fear for the first time. "We assumed this would be an easy conquest. We were wrong. Prepare for defensive positions and await further instructions." Humanity, even in a single survivor, had once again turned apparent weakness into the ultimate advantage. The aliens had underestimated patience, intelligence, and the subtle power of the mind. As evening approached, the human turned their attention to a larger plan. They had studied the aliens' technology, their tactics, their communication patterns. They had seen how they adapted in real time, yet every adaptation fell into traps prearranged centuries ago. And now the human prepared the next phase, the awakening of the larger guardians. Machines long dormant, genetically engineered predators, and even the city itself, layered with mechanisms, toxins, and biological traps, would emerge in a coordinated strike. The aliens had survived the first wave, but the second would be decisive. The sun dipped lower, casting the city into long shadows and dim light. The human moved through the ruins, silent and deliberate. Every step, every action was calculated. Even the creatures that followed were extensions of thought, responding without hesitation, anticipating without error. The aliens were no longer intruders. They were participants in a battlefield designed to teach humility, respect, and fear. As night fell, the human paused atop a crumbling tower, looking down at the scattered alien forces. They raised a hand slightly, and the city itself seemed to pulse, as if acknowledging its commander. Birds circled above, wolves patrolled below, and hidden devices hummed quietly in anticipation. Every corner, every shadow, every silent crevice was part of a plan that only the human could see in its entirety. The alien commander, in the center of the scattered forces, looked up at the ruins with a growing sense of dread. They had underestimated one human. They had assumed an easy conquest. Now they were beginning to realize that humanity's greatest weapon had never been its armies, nor its technology, but its mind, the mind of a species that had learned to survive, adapt, and conquer against impossible odds. The last human whispered into the wind, almost as a promise to the planet and themselves. They will learn. They always learn. But only after they meet the monsters Earth has become. The human was no longer just a survivor. They were a general, a strategist, and a force that would reshape every expectation the galaxy held about humanity. The aliens did not yet fully understand what they faced, but they were beginning to glimpse it. Earth had awakened. Its monsters had been unleashed. And the last human, the final child of a vanished species, was prepared to ensure that the galaxy never underestimated humans again. The alien forces regrouped at the edge of what had once been a wide boulevard, their ships hovering low as though reluctant to land. The sun dipped toward the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the crumbling city. What had begun as a calculated scouting mission had become a nightmare. The aliens, trained in countless wars and armed with advanced technology, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn by a single human. They had underestimated Earth, and now that miscalculation had consequences. From the heights of a collapsed skyscraper, the last human observed the alien movements with measured calm. They had anticipated this moment, the stage where the intruders would finally realize the full extent of the planet's power. Patience, they thought, was the ultimate weapon. The aliens' fear was subtle at first, but now it had begun to ripple through their ranks. Every hesitating step, every misfire, every attempt at tactical coordination betrayed their growing uncertainty. Below, creatures emerged in patterns that were no longer chaotic but tactical. Wolves with alloyed claws moved to flank, while birds dove to disrupt sensors and force movement into pre-planned kill zones. Even insects, swarming in near-perfect synchronization, pushed the aliens into streets where concealed pits and reactive plants lay in wait. The battlefield was alive, orchestrated by a mind that had become one with the ruined city. The alien commander, a tall, segmented being whose eyes reflected rising panic, called for a council of officers. "We cannot proceed as before," they admitted, voice heavy with tension. "Our sensors are useless. The terrain itself works against us. We must adapt or we will fail." The human, observing from the tower, allowed themselves a small smile. The aliens were beginning to understand the truth. Survival had never been humanity's weakness. It had been its strength. Adaptation, intellect, patience, all the traits that had allowed a species once thought extinct to thrive in isolation, were now weapons sharper than any blade or laser. The creatures and traps of Earth were extensions of the human mind, ready to strike with surgical precision. The first direct engagement of the day came when an alien squad attempted to flank a cluster of human-made barricades. A massive bear-like creature, its claws reinforced with metal and its intelligence honed over decades, charged into their path. The squad fired indiscriminately, but each attack was anticipated and countered. The beast pushed them into a narrow alley where reactive plants and automated devices awaited. Sparks flew, armor cracked, and panic erupted. The aliens had learned that brute force was not enough. They needed strategy, but the human had anticipated theirs before it even began. The commander clenched segmented claws in frustration. They cannot be allowed to dictate the terms of battle. Prepare all forces. We must locate the human and neutralize them directly. Every misstep made by the intruders reinforced the narrative of Earth's strength. Now it was time to escalate. With a faint gesture, the human activated dormant machines concealed beneath rubble. Once silent automata, bioengineered constructs, and other devices long hidden emerged in unison. They moved with precision, attacking alien supply lines, communications hubs, and vehicles. Every strike was calculated to weaken, confuse, and isolate the enemy. The aliens fought back, deploying explosives and energy blasts, but the battlefield was already designed to absorb, redirect, and punish such attacks. The aliens began to realize that they were not merely facing a human. They were confronting the embodiment of an entire planet's survival instinct. Every creature, every machine, every reactive element was connected, coordinated, and intelligent. The city itself seemed to anticipate their movements, guiding them toward traps and away from safety. The human descended from the rooftop at last, moving with deliberate calm. Their presence alone seemed to empower the creatures, synchronize the traps, and control the battlefield. Wolves adjusted their positions, birds dived with precise timing, and hidden devices responded instantly to each alien maneuver. Even the smallest motion of the human was amplified across the ruins, each step commanding the environment with near-military precision. An alien officer managed to glimpse the human in the open for a brief moment. Lean, composed, and unarmed, the figure exuded an aura of authority that seemed to resonate across the city. Their eyes, sharp and calculating, seemed to anticipate every alien tactic, every countermeasure, every instinctive move. In that instant, the officer realized that this human was no ordinary survivor. This was a strategist, a general, a mind centuries ahead of their enemies. As the sun set, the last human initiated the final phase of the day's plan. From hidden vaults beneath the city, massive creatures, dormant for decades, emerged. They were the culmination of human ingenuity and adaptation. Hybrid beasts, partially organic, partially mechanical, trained to respond to commands with precision and intelligence. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Even their advanced technology struggled to track and anticipate these new threats. The first wave of these guardians struck with surgical precision. They did not attack blindly. They herded, isolated, and manipulated the enemy. Squads were forced into corridors lined with reactive plants, automated traps, and hidden hazards. Confusion spread rapidly. Fear, the human knew, was the most effective weapon. The aliens were skilled warriors, but they were unprepared for an enemy that was invisible, unpredictable, and infinitely patient. In the center of the chaos, the commander realized the truth. "This is not a battlefield," they admitted quietly. "It is a living weapon. The human commands it. They have turned every ruin, every tree, every creature into extensions of themselves. Retreat may be our only option." Their technology, advanced though it was, could not overcome the calculated coordination of Earth and its last human inhabitant. The last human stood at the edge of a crumbling bridge, observing the alien chaos. They did not feel triumph, not yet. This was a test, a lesson, a demonstration of humanity's enduring strength. They had survived wars, plagues, and the collapse of their species. Now they would show the galaxy that humans were never truly weak, never truly defeated. They spoke softly, their voice carried by hidden amplifiers, reaching the ears of the scattered aliens. "You sought salvation," they said, each word deliberate, weighted with centuries of knowledge. "You will find only monsters. You will learn that humanity's strength has never been in numbers, but in mind, in will, and in the refusal to surrender." The human had orchestrated this entire conflict from the shadows, manipulating the environment, the creatures, and even the enemy's assumptions. Night deepened, and with it came a final wave of guardians. Enormous machines, remnants of human engineering and bioengineered beasts emerged from the ruins, moving with silent coordination. They struck with precision, isolating alien units, severing communication lines, and cutting off escape routes. The battle, which had already demonstrated Earth's cunning, now revealed its full power. The aliens were no longer attackers. They were prey in a living, breathing fortress. The commander, exhausted and overwhelmed, called a halt to the offensive. They had lost too many units, been forced into too many traps, and faced creatures and devices they could not comprehend. "Pull back," they ordered. "We will regroup. We must understand what we are facing before we proceed." Humanity's mind, though represented by a single survivor, was capable of controlling the planet's defenses with unparalleled efficiency. The galaxy had been wrong to assume that humans were extinct or weak. They were anything but. In the quiet aftermath, the creatures of Earth returned to their positions, blending into shadows, trees, and ruins. The city itself seemed to breathe again, alive and vigilant. The human walked among the guardians, silent and calm, surveying the battlefield with a mind already planning the next phase. The aliens had learned painfully that to underestimate humanity was a grave error. The last human spoke softly, almost as a promise to the planet and to themselves. "They will return," they said. "And when they do, they will face not just one human, but the strength of an entire world, molded by centuries of survival. Let them come. They will learn what it means to face Earth itself." The aliens had survived this encounter, but the lesson had been harsh and unforgettable. Humanity, even in a single survivor, had proven that intelligence, patience, and adaptation were weapons far greater than lasers or numbers. And as the last human gazed at the horizon, their mind already calculating the next moves, the galaxy beyond began to understand that Earth was no longer merely a planet. It was a fortress, a weapon, and a warning. The aliens had seen monsters, traps, and beasts, but the true force was the human mind that had orchestrated it all. The battle had reached its peak, and the aliens had begun to recognize the scale of what they faced. They had underestimated survival, underestimated intelligence, and underestimated humanity itself. And the last human, standing atop the ruins of a world thought lost, knew that the true test, the ultimate lesson, was yet to come. Earth had unleashed its monsters, and the galaxy would never forget the last human. The stars above Earth burned cold and distant, indifferent to the turmoil unfolding below. Yet on the planet's surface, life stirred with a purpose that made the heavens seem trivial. The alien coalition, battered and wary, had regrouped at the fringes of the ruined city, their ships hovering low as if fearful of touching the ground. They had survived the initial waves of Earth's defenses, but the lesson had been clear. The planet was alive, and its last human was its mind, its commander, and its ultimate weapon. From the heights of a crumbling skyscraper, the last human watched the alien formations. The day's battles had been carefully orchestrated lessons in strategy, patience, and precision. Every misstep by the aliens had been observed, every reaction catalogued. And now, the final phase was at hand. This would not be a battle fought with desperation. It would be a demonstration of what humanity, even in a single survivor, could accomplish when intelligence and survival were fused. The alien commander, segmented eyes flickering nervously, addressed their remaining units. "We have underestimated this planet," they admitted, voice heavy with fatigue. "We must proceed with caution. No direct engagement until we understand the full scope of what we face." Every creature, every device, every modified plant was ready to act, guided by centuries of planning and the singular mind of the human who had survived the extinction of their species. From hidden vaults beneath the city, enormous constructs began to stir. Machines long dormant, hybridized with organic components and designed for precision strikes, emerged from the shadows. Their movements were silent but deliberate, coordinated with the creatures that prowled above and between the ruins. Wolves with reinforced claws flanked the machines, guiding them through the city. Birds of all sizes swooped strategically, disrupting sensors and herding aliens into narrow corridors. Even insects moved in perfect synchronization, forcing alien units into paths where traps awaited. The alien squads attempted to form lines, to coordinate, to fight back. Lasers cut through the air, and energy pulses shattered parts of the ruins. But every attack was anticipated. Every path they took was prepared for. The city itself seemed to pulse, a living weapon under the control of the last human. They had turned Earth into a battlefield designed for one purpose, to demonstrate the strength of a species that the galaxy had long thought extinct. The commander tried to rally the troops, ordering flanking maneuvers and concentrated fire. "Target the human directly," they demanded. "If we cannot control the battlefield, we must eliminate the mind controlling it." They did not yet understand that Earth itself was a force they could not defeat. With a subtle gesture, the human activated the next wave. From the ruins, massive creatures, bear-like, wolf-like, and entirely alien in design, emerged, moving with precision and intelligence. Automated machines joined the assault, their sensors feeding real-time data into the humans' hidden command networks. Even the environment itself became a weapon. Pavements shifted, hidden pits opened, reactive plants lashed out, and traps long prepared sprang to life. Every alien movement was anticipated, every hesitation punished, every tactic countered. The aliens tried to regroup, but their formation was shattered. The creatures and machines worked in coordination, isolating units and cutting off escape routes. Communication lines flickered and died under precise strikes. Panic spread, subtle at first, then undeniable. The coalition had faced formidable opponents before, but never one that turned an entire planet into a weapon. They realized that they were no longer the hunters, they were the prey. The last human descended from the rooftop at last, moving with deliberate calm through the ruins. Their presence alone seemed to energize the creatures, synchronize the machines, and coordinate the battlefield. Wolves flanked the human as if part of their body, birds swooped with precise timing, and hidden automata activated instantaneously in response to each gesture. Even the smallest motion of the human caused ripples across the battlefield, reinforcing the fact that every advantage belonged to the planet's last child. One alien officer, cornered in a narrow alley, caught a glimpse of the human in the open. Lean, composed, unarmed, yet radiating authority, the figure exuded control over the chaos surrounding them. Their eyes, sharp and calculating, seemed to anticipate every alien tactic, every countermeasure, every instinctive move. In that moment, the officer understood the truth. This was no ordinary human. This was the embodiment of strategy, survival, and the indomitable spirit of a species the galaxy had once dismissed. The battle escalated as night fell. Massive creatures tore through alien formations with precision. Wolves guided them into traps, birds disrupted sensors, and hidden machines struck critical points in alien armor and equipment. The aliens fought valiantly, but every victory was Pyrrhic. Every step forward met with new obstacles. The human had anticipated every move, and Earth itself seemed to act as a singular, intelligent force under their command. From the central tower, the human raised a hand slightly, and the city pulsed in response. Streets shifted, walls adjusted, and shadows twisted in subtle but lethal ways. The aliens realized, too late, that their understanding of terrain, technology, and tactics was useless against a mind that had integrated itself with a planet. Every step they took was watched, every maneuver countered, and every assumption proven wrong. The commander's frustration became desperation. They called for a retreat, hoping to preserve the remainder of their forces. But even escape proved impossible. The city had anticipated this, and the last human's guardians moved to block every route. Wolves, machines, and hybrid creatures surrounded the aliens, cutting off their exit. Birds of prey and insects forced them into paths laden with traps, and the reactive plants and hidden mechanisms struck with flawless timing. The coalition was trapped in a living labyrinth, and the human at its center was the master. As the aliens struggled, the human addressed them for the first time directly. Their voice, carried by amplifiers scattered throughout the city, was calm but powerful. "You sought salvation," they said, each word deliberate. "You believed humanity was weak, extinguished, helpless. You were wrong. You will find no mercy here, only the strength that survived, adapted, and endured. You will leave this world knowing that humans are never defeated, and that even one of us can command the fury of a planet." They had expected weakness, vulnerability, and pleading. Instead, they found strategy, patience, intelligence, and an environment that had been weaponized over centuries. Earth itself was alive, and its last human was the command center of its defense. One by one, the alien ships retreated, carrying battered and broken squads away from the planet. Those who survived did so with scars, both physical and mental. They had encountered monsters, traps, and beasts, but the true lesson was in the mind that orchestrated them all. The last human watched silently, not celebrating but acknowledging the truth of what had occurred. Humanity, even reduced to one, had prevailed through intellect, foresight, and the refusal to surrender. The city settled into an uneasy calm. The creatures, machines, and mechanisms returned to their dormant or semi-dormant states, blending once more into the ruins. The last human walked among them, silent and vigilant, their eyes sweeping the horizon. Earth was no longer merely a planet. It was a fortress, a living testament to what humanity could accomplish when underestimated. Across the galaxy, whispers of the last human began to spread. Signals from the retreating alien fleet carried warnings. A single human commanded a planet as if it were an extension of themselves. Intelligence, patience, strategy, and adaptability were the weapons of this species, far beyond what any had predicted. The legend of Earth's last child began to grow, a story of humanity that the galaxy would not soon forget. The human paused atop the central tower, gazing at the stars. They had survived, but they were not content merely with survival. Their mind already turned to the future, to the continued defense of their home, to the preparation for the inevitable return of those who sought to underestimate Earth again. The monsters they commanded, the machines they controlled, and the creatures of the planet were only part of what made humans formidable. Their true strength lay in thought, planning, and the unyielding will to endure. And in that quiet, powerful moment, the last human whispered to themselves, a vow carried across the ruins of the city. They begged for salvation, they said softly, voice steady and sure. But they found monsters instead. They will remember, and they will never underestimate humanity again. Earth had awakened fully, its monsters unleashed, its defenses perfected, and its last human standing tall among the ruins. The galaxy had learned a lesson too late. Humanity, even in its smallest numbers, could command the fury of a planet. Survival was not weakness, patience was not passivity, and the mind of a single human could reshape the battlefield of an entire world. In the shadows, the creatures settled, ever alert, ever vigilant, waiting for the next command. The machines powered down but remained ready, hidden but prepared. The city itself, scarred but alive, seemed to hum with energy, aware of its guardian and the power that had returned to it. And above it all, the last human stood, silent, composed, unbroken, and undefeated. The galaxy would never forget this day. Earth's monsters were not merely the wildlife, nor the machines, nor the traps. They were the embodiment of human ingenuity, resilience, and will. The last human had proven that survival, intelligence, and courage were far more terrifying than armies, lasers, or fleets. The stars above blinked coldly, but beneath them, Earth was alive, and its last child had ensured that the galaxy would remember humanity forever.